Dear Mr. Schneider, ladies and gentlemen, thank you first of all for the invitation to this conference. And let me start with one remark, having listened to the friend from the Deutsche Telekom. One of the most important things when we talk about digitalization is the following point. We have to build up, and not only, let's say, at telcos or in ICT community, we have to build up a common understanding what digitalization means. Because being involved in many discussions in the public, in the political area, with companies, my view is the following. So far, we haven't got a common understanding what digitalization means. Because when we look at discussions, we have different approaches. Sometimes people talk about infrastructure. That's, of course, a very important question. Some talk about platforms. Some talk about standards, some talk about qualifications that are needed in the future, some talk about what kind of market framework do we need to have, let's say, a balanced and fair competition on the market, and not to have, let's say, some kind of disruptive business models that's going to change and attack certain businesses we have so far. So for me, one of the most important things, and therefore I'm very glad to be here and have the discussion with you, we have to build up this common understanding. And we from the Federal Ministry of Economy, we have a very simple understanding. The simple understanding means digitalization is a need for the German economy. Without digitalization, there will be no longer competitiveness on our side. And I give you one number that makes me, that's very important to understand what kind of challenge we have. A couple of months ago, there was Handelsblatt made a research in small and medium-sized companies. And the outcome of this research was the following. 70% of the small and medium-sized companies said digitalization is not at the top of their agenda. And if that is true, there's a huge challenge, because if my thesis is right, that without digitalization and the transformation also for small and medium-sized companies in the next years into the digital world, we are not only losing competitive, some might lose their existence. And therefore, it's our common task to help people to go their way into, let's say, the digital world, and to make them clear what kind of steps they have to do to make this possible. That is very important. And when I talk to small and medium-sized companies, I always make the following experience. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty. What is the right driver? What is the key element if I go into a transformation process for the digitalization of my company? And therefore, we have to work very hard and make people clear how important the way into the digitalization transformation period is. One of the things we are doing is we have created a platform, Industry 4.0, and the Telekom and Siemens and other small and medium-sized companies are involved. And sometimes very interesting, when a German word becomes a word that you don't need to translate into English, because as it is known, like Energiewende, when you go to an international conference and talk about energy, everyone knows the word Energiewende. And that is also true for what we call Industry 4.0. And I've been this year a couple of times to China, to Brazil, to Taipei, Taiwan these days, and everyone is talking with us about Industry 4.0 because these countries understand they understand perfectly that they have to go into the digitalization, and they try to learn from Germany what digitalization means. And therefore we have to look at the process. And let me say, from my point of understanding, we have two approaches what digitalization or Industry 4.0 means and who's the driver. On the one hand, I would say there's the American approach. The American approach is platform-driven, and that is a huge challenge for companies, because platforms tend to do the following. They could go between producer and customer, and that is a huge challenge for many companies. And on the other hand, we have, let's say, I would call the German way of Industry 4.0 or digitalization. This is coming from, let's say, the production side. And from my understanding, there will be a huge struggle in the next 10 years or in the next decade. What is the right approach? And what is the more successful approach in this digitalization process? And we have to look for one thing. We have to look that we are able, with the help of Internet of Things, whatsoever, to make our industrial sector competitive in the next years. And that is, of course, a huge question and very important because we want to be one of the leading industrial countries also in the next years. Because digitalization in the industrial sector means an increase of productivity up to 30% and a cost fall of about 2.6% per year. And there are huge opportunities to be more resource and energy efficient, by the way. This is also going to help to make our economy more competitive. So we have created this industry platform 4.0, and this is very important because 50 million jobs depend directly or indirectly on the goods producing sector. The digitalization of industrial production process and the emergence of disruptive technology will blur the boundaries between traditional sectors. Value chain will change and global market shares will shift. For a strong manufacturing country like Germany, digitalization of the economy is therefore a key policy issue. And therefore, I call this, we need learning partnerships between different sectors, between politics, companies, science, to make understand what kind of way we should go. And we have to talk about what kind of conflicts in this period will come up. And therefore, I think it's very important if we talk about the implementation of Industry 4.0, this will depend, from my point of view, on 6 different factors. Firstly, we need a well-developed digital infrastructure. Over the next years, the amount of data that is exchanged will increase exponentially. And therefore, we need more investment, of course, in infrastructure. The target of 50 Mbit per second in 2018 for all is a very small step, because if you look at the data volume for the time coming, we have to speed up and we have to do more investment into digital infrastructure. Secondly, the number of connected devices will drastically increase as digitalization and the networking of production processes continues. Thirdly, we need to achieve a high degree of openness to digital solution in company managements, in the workforce, and in the general public. New business models and new work patterns can only be successful introduced if there is a consensus between companies and their employees. Fourthly, we must reach out and mobilize our small and medium-sized companies across the board. Industry 4.0 must reach the companies in the regions and become a firm element of their business models. Fifthly, the level of training among employees will play a major role. Our dual system of vocational training will have to keep pace with the new challenges we are facing. And lastly, we must press ahead with the international cooperation. As a major exporter and a supplier of factory equipment to companies around the world, we need international cooperation and coordinated solution, especially regarding to standards. And therefore, one of the main elements we are trying to do in the platform industry 4.0 is working on test beds, on use cases, and building up standards. And the target for this year to have at the end of this year 100 test beds and use cases where we can build up certain standards and look how we can use them, and then we have to do the next step. We need not only German standards, we need European standards, we need international standards, and therefore we also agreed to work together with the IIC. So that international, the American Industry 4.0 platform, so to say, where American and German and European companies are working together on these kind of standards. So from my understanding, these are key elements that we have to reach. And therefore, we have to look also what kind of problems and what kind of uncertainties are there. If you, by the way, talk to small and medium-sized companies and say, you have to go the way into the digitalization, one of the first answers or the first questions is, how secure are my data? Because when the balance between the digital world and the mechanical world is changing, and some of my USP or my know-how has to change from the mechanical world into the digital world, the most important question for especially small and medium-sized companies is the question of data security, because this is key for them, because that means their knowledge otherwise is no longer their knowledge, but and they are losing competitiveness. And therefore, data security is a key element, and not only of NSA and other questions, but as I said, because small and medium-sized companies fear to lose their USP, fear to lose their know-how, and fear to lose their competitiveness. As I said, standards and standards are of key importance in the Industry 4.0, and therefore we are working very hard on these issues, and we have to build up and we have to reduce, as you said, we have to reduce different standards, and we have to build up more common standards to make the process of digitalization work in the next years. And we have also to look for the question, what does it mean to employees in Germany? Because if it's true that digitalization, or some people call it the fourth industrial revolution, will change our way to work, to live, and so on, we have to invest in qualifications. And we have to speed up with the understanding what kind of professions we must have and what kind of qualifications are necessary in the next years. So I expect that in 5 years we will have professions we don't even know the names today. And that, of course, is a huge challenge for the qualification sector, starting in school, but also for our dual system. And we have to speed up to bring up these new elements into our qualification and education system. Otherwise, we can't and will not be successful. So these are a couple of remarks on digitalization. And my hope is that, because a lot of companies are here, and the platform industry 4.0 is an open process. And I'd like to invite you to be part of this process and to join the different work platforms we have built up in the platform industry 4.0. Because I'm very sure, without the expertise not only of big companies but also of small and medium-sized companies, we will not be able to face this challenge. So we need your know-how, we need your competence, we need your solutions, we need your expertise to be successful in this race, and it will be a race because, as I said, digitalization is a question of competitiveness of the German economy in the next years. And therefore, I hope this fair is going to help to build up this common understanding, to also to understand what kind of target conflicts we have in this process of digitalization, and there will be a lot of target differences or target conflicts between, by the way, flexibility on the for example, on the employer side, and of course other questions. And therefore, we have to look that we have to build up, that we can build up this common understanding of digitalization, identify the target conflicts, and come to a common understanding what are the most important programs and leverages we have to build up in the next years to be successful in this process. So, I wish the fair a good debate, new insights, and of course a lot of business and a lot of common understanding what kind of challenges we are facing. And let me finish with the following. 95% of industrial companies in Germany state that digitalization has an impact on their business and work processes. However, only 3% believe that they have reached their full digital potential. So there's an understanding that we have to do something, but there's also a great need to speed up with this process and go in the direction of digitalization. And that means we have to build up learning partnerships, we have to work together to be successful in this process, and I hope this conference and this fair will help to go in this direction. Thank you and good luck.